Hello, everybody. My name is Katie Wargo, and I am a coalition coordinator for a prevention team and prevention coalition. And I'm here today to talk to you about understanding substance misuse disorder. My coalition is Northern Lights Against Substance Misuse and Western Arundel Substance Prevention. There's also ASAP, which is Annapolis Prevention, and South County Bridges Prevention. We partner with the Department of Health and their prevention team as a whole. Today, we're going to talk about what is substance misuse disorder, leading risk factors of substance misuse, how it impacts our youth, what is mental wellness, and various coping strategies to help work your way through substance misuse disorder before it even starts, and various treatment and resources that are available right here in Anne Arundel County. So, substance misuse disorder is an uncontrolled use of a substance. This means that a substance misuse disorder is a complex condition in which there's an uncontrolled use of any substance despite its harmful consequences. So, this means that if somebody was actively using a substance, even with them understanding that there are dangerous things that can happen, there's always side effects in just about anything we do, you're unable to stop doing it. With substance misuse, we're talking specific substances, whether it's a controlled substance or even something that a doctor prescribes. But of course, there can be a misuse disorder to just about anything from chocolate to going to the mall shopping. It's just the overuse of anything and using it in a negative way. So, a breakdown. Those suffering from a substance misuse disorder have an intense focus on that substance. It's that they could use tobacco, alcohol, illicit drugs. This could even be a prescription medication. This could come, like I said, from a doctor or even caffeine. It means that basically one would continue to use even if they know it's causing problems or harm to them. And also it's something that they're doing in their day-to-day life all the time. So there's many factors that cause a substance misuse disorder. We have the biological factor, family history, and DNA. There's generational trauma, just some situational trauma and life experiences. And then you have your home life and family, peers, and things like that. So we're going to go into that breakdown a little bit and understanding what those factors actually mean. With biological factors, understanding your own health is the right way to go for anything. Whether it's you have a family history of diabetes, you have a family history of cancer, it is no different with a family history of mental health or substance misuse disorder. These are things that completely are generational and genetically predisposed and can be passed down from generation to generation. So if you know that there is a family history down the line somewhere, whether it's a grandparent, great grandparent, or aunt, uncle, cousin, brother, you should absolutely check into that and keep your eye out for different factors and different signs that could pop up along the way for yourself and even your children. So like we said, being generally or genetically predisposed. And also males have a higher risk factor than females. It's unfortunately what it is, and it doesn't mean that a female is not going to be genetically predisposed to substance misuse disorder. It just means that a male DNA has a higher risk factor than a female. And also brain development stages. So our brain is not fully developed until we're between 23 and 25 years old. So this also means that if one was, say, they're genetically predisposed and they were exposed to alcohol or cannabis at a younger age and before their brain was fully developed, that they have also a higher chance of becoming addicted to a substance. It just kind of stops your brain in its tracks and it doesn't allow your brain to pick up where it left off. So not that the brain won't eventually develop, it just, you're at a standstill at that age until you're in a better place and then your brain can start to do what it needs to do, but it slows everything down and almost stops it. The next risk factor that we have is generational trauma or life experiences. So a generational trauma or life experience means that an emotional shock following a stressful life event, experience, or an injury can cause trauma. There's no situations where continued generational trauma can be affected, how addiction starts. So generational trauma would be something like continued abuse, an unstable home life, ethnicity falls into factors with that. And then you have trauma, things like divorce or death, a serious injury or illness that just kind of popped up that you weren't expecting, Believe it or not, moving around a lot, military would be considered some sort of trauma, and then bullying. So all of these are risk factors for that could cause one to start using a substance. When we're talking about generational trauma, this is a situation where, or even generational substance use, that this falls back years and years and years. And it's almost like you don't feel that you have any other way but to do what you know and what you've always seen. And as easy as it is to say that, well, I'm never going to be like my parent, or I'm never going to be like my grandparent, or I'm not going to be like them, it's still very easy to fall right back into that or use a substance to mask that pain that they've been feeling all those years. And it just tends to repeat itself. And then when we talk about just plain and simple trauma, some sort of event that just popped up, it is something like divorce, feeling like it's your fault. Whether kids know that it's not their fault or not, they tend to they take that on. We as human beings take things on. So divorce, death, injuries, moving around, and having to meet new friends. And then, of course, being bullied. All of those are reasons that we as human beings feel that we take it on. We take on that heavy load. And once someone has used a substance and immediately felt that relief from that substance, they start to realize that, like, okay, well, I can use this substance to make myself feel better. And then they continue to do so. And then you have that high risk factor of becoming addicted to something. And then the last risk factor would be home life, family, peers. So when we're talking about home, it can either be a safe haven or an unsafe place. So just because you feel that your home is a safe haven, it doesn't mean that everybody has that, and everybody feels that. Family genetics cause addiction, and or family can cause abuse that leads to trauma with those underlying reasons for one's use. And then peers have a huge influence, whether it's positive or negative, which also falls right back into that trauma with that last risk factor, and bullying. So, we always talk about peer pressure and gateway drugs and things like that, but it really all, as simple as it is to say and as taboo as it is to say, it really is a serious, serious risk factor and something that we need to be aware of. There's always physical warning signs when we're talking about substance misuse disorder, and that would be things like bloodshot eyes, pupils large or smaller than usual. So when we talk about the pupils being larger or smaller, typically if it's some sort of opioid, it would be a smaller pupil. Their eyes, hypothetically, if you have blue eyes, they're probably going to be the most beautiful blue eyes you've ever seen because you just see so much color that pupil is just so little that that's all you see. And then if we're talking about a larger pupil where their eyes are just all black because their pupils are fully dilated, almost as though they went and had drops put in from an eye doctor, that would be a stimulant of some kind, whether it's alcohol or honestly cocaine, even something as simple as Adderall, which is a prescribed medication. So that is how you can typically tell what substance is in their body. If they walk outside or they're inside and their eyes don't contract back and forth the way that they're supposed to naturally, and they just stay really small or really big, that is a physical warning sign, and typically the easiest way to tell. Changes in an appetite or sleep patterns, again, whether you're on something that slows your heart rate or raises your heart rate. Typically things that raise your heart rate, you don't sleep. It's just your heart is pumping and your body is pumping and you can't really slow down or stop. Most substances, no matter what you're on, changes your appetite. Most don't want to eat because it almost curves your appetite. And this goes all the way back to tobacco. Tobacco even curbs your appetite. So those are all really good things. If you notice all of a sudden they're just not eating, or again, they're sleeping a lot, which would be an opioid, or some sort of downer, and or they're sleeping not enough, that would be an upper. Discoloration of their physical appearance and their personal grooming habits. If they are using once or twice, you're probably not gonna notice a major physical appearance change or even those grooming habits change. But as substance misuse progression happens, that will continue to happen. And you will notice that their skin becomes a pale gray, greenish, clammy color. And a lot of times, like, you don't care about brushing your teeth, you don't care about showering. And those are also warning signs, not even for substance misuse, but as far as the grooming habits go for mental health. If you notice a deterioration in grooming habits, you want to talk to them and ask them, hey, is everything okay? Because chances are, if they don't care about the way they look or taking care of themselves, they're feeling a certain kind of way and they need a conversation and they probably need help. The next warning sign would be runny nose or sniffing a lot. This tends to be something that if you are using a substance and you used it through your nose, you sniffed it, snorted it, it tends to make a lot of mucus, and or they're constantly sniffing, trying to get that substance up their nose and back into their brain and into their bloodstream. So you'll notice a lot of, or you'll see them wiping. They tend to not want to blow their nose, because if they were to blow their nose, all of that is going to come out, because a lot of the substance, or at least part of it, gets stuck in the mucus and they're just working that up. And then it just continues, like I said, because it increases your mucus count. So there's a lot of just snot going on beyond a normal day. Then, of course, we have our sudden weight loss or gain. Everybody's bodies reacts to different things differently. So there are people that can eat all the food in the world and never gain a pound, and there's people that hardly eat anything and still gain weight. So it's hard to say that if you're on a substance, you're going to completely lose and be all your weight and be super skinny. So it has been proven that the first noticeable factors for a person that is in active addiction is their collarbones and their cheekbones tend to become more prominent. So even if it's somebody that is on the heavier side or obese, you can still see where their cheeks start to sink in and where you see those collarbones almost highlighted and starting to stick out. And then there's also medication that can cause you to gain weight with substance misuse disorder. If you are in treatment and you are in the methadone program, which is a proven medication for treating substance misuse disorder, they start you off and meet you where you are with your addiction, and then they start to wean you down. But that medication makes you gain weight most of the time. And then as you see them being weaned down off that medication, you start to see them go back to their normal weight. So it doesn't mean that just because somebody is on somebody is in substance misuse and active addiction using a substance that they're going to be super, super skinny and that stereotypical person that you probably have inside your head right now. There are so many different factors that play into this. Also, there's certain substances that make you want to eat sugary foods and sweet items. So that's also kind of when we're talking about weight loss or weight gain, certain foods. If you see a lot of just sweets in general, that is a side effect of the different substances that are prescribed by doctors. That is an opioid. So there can be somebody that just loses all their weight and they're just super, super skinny. And again, it can be somebody that all of a sudden gains a lot of weight. So you want to just watch for a drastic change in general. That's what we're looking for. Drastic change in appearance all the way around, one way or the other. There's also things like tremors, slurred speech, and impaired coordination, especially like when we're talking about alcohol or opioids. We're talking about that coordination factor. If somebody has been using alcohol or drinking alcohol, as you know, the more they drink, we start to lose our coordination. That could be anybody, whether it's you go to grab something and you miss it real quick, or that's like a small piece, or the full sway happening and they can never not even stand up. And then opioids can make you do that as well, because you're sleepy, tend to be sleepier, and it can make you kind of fall asleep. It's called nodding out. That's like a slang term for it, but ultimately it's hard for you to stay awake even if you're standing. And then the last warning sign, as far as like just noticeable changes, would be unusual odors on breath, body, or clothing. So again, clothing and body could be something going all the way back to those grooming habits. but also there can be a smell coming from the inside of your body, almost like a rot of an organ or something happening. I know if there's excessive cocaine use or excessive sniffing or snorting a substance, it rots the inside of your nose, which carries down to your mouth and causes a really bad breath. Rotting teeth inside, there is definite connection to drugs and tooth decay. So those are all things that can cause those unusual odors all the way around. So yeah, those are your physical warning signs that you really just want to keep an eye out for. So the next would be your behavioral warning signs. This is not by just looking at the person that you're going to notice something. This is their behaviors. There's always going to be some sort of behavioral change when we're talking about substance misuse disorder, mental health, all of that wrapped in together. So you're going to start noticing that there's going to be a difficulty in a relationship, whether it is your relationship with that person or you are watching their relationships change with others. They're going to start engaging in kind of like that secretive or maybe even suspicious behavior. You start noticing that maybe they're lying or you feel that they're lying. They're doing strange things that they wouldn't typically do. Getting into trouble, whether it's legal, fights in school, fights at home, arguments with people they typically don't argue with, more arguments with people that they care about, because those people that care about them are going to be the ones asking the questions. They're going to be questioning that quote unquote suspicious behavior. So they are going to start an argument back and deflect off of them and start pointing fingers elsewhere. They're going to play victim wholeheartedly 100%. So you'll probably also notice an increase in accidents. And this could be general accidents like being in a car and getting in a car accident because whether they're falling asleep at the wheel or just not fully paying attention, they have other things on their minds, or even being prone to accidents on themselves, breaking bones, falling down, scratches, bruises, the whole 9 yards. Any accident that you've noticed that it's just a major increase that doesn't typically happen. And then we have illegal activities. So unfortunately, decision making falls into this, and there is poor decision making when it comes to substance misuse disorder. Not intentionally. It's more of because they're thinking about one thing and one thing only, because their body has this overwhelming response to the substance that they cannot think of anything else except for making themselves feel better. Because when you start going through withdrawal, you are physically sick. It is the flu times 100, and there is nothing that can make them feel better except for that substance that they're now missing. So this means that if they are a person who's never been in trouble before and all of a sudden getting in trouble with the law, and that's a big sign. But it's not, again, it's not to hurt anyone. It's because they need they need to get themselves where back to feeling normal again, because this drug is what they need to feel normal. There's also neglecting responsibilities. So if we're talking school, sports, work, anything at home, if there's chores, things like that, if they're typically a really good student and then all of a sudden not, ask them why. There's something going on. If they were this great athlete and you see a change in their sports and the way that they're playing, increased good, increased bad, you might want to ask them. Because if we're talking increased good out of nowhere, they have a stamina that you've never noticed before. There could be something else going on. They could be taking a medication to increase performance. Work. They are calling out of work. They're not going. They're showing up late. They're leaving early. They're cutting out midday. They're not attending college. Whatever it is, these are all things that you definitely will notice a major neglect and some sort of responsibility. We have sudden change in friends, hobbies, hangouts. This is a big one, especially if we're talking about our youth. Our kids, of course, kids are so resilient. They bounce back, they meet new people so easily. It's wonderful. But they also still have their friends, and they tend to have friend groups. If they're on a sports team and they're with those kids 5 days a week, they're the ones that they tend to hang out with outside of school, right? If they're in a club, those are the kids that they're hanging with. If all of a sudden you notice that they're not hanging with that same core group that they've been hanging with all this time, and they're with a different friend group, that is a major, major, major warning sign that something is going on. It could be something as simple as there was a fight that had happened, and but you need to know that as a parent. I would want to know that as a parent, because that could be a major risk factor in potentially substance use. Again, change in hobbies. If they have a hobby or a sport that they absolutely love and they no longer want to do it anymore, that's a pretty clear warning sign. Something happened to make them feel that way. The places that they usually want to hang out, all of a sudden they want to hang out at different places. They're asking you to drop them off at different households. Question it. There's nothing wrong with questioning. You have the right as a parent to ask. We have unexplained need for money or sudden financial problems. Younger kids, if they're asking for money more frequently, that's you want to ask them why. What do you need that for? And then if they are maybe an older person, let's say older high school and even early college age, and they've been working and they have their own money and they've always been able to, yeah, of course you pay for certain things as parents, but they've been able to kind of cover their own cost as far as going out and doing little things with their friends, and all of a sudden they don't have the money to do that, but you know they're still working. Why? Where did their money go? Ask. Again, it's your right as a parent to ask. Using under dangerous conditions. This is a big one, and this can go in so many different ways, because I can trail off on this for just proper use as somebody in active addiction, and begging and pleading them to make sure that if you are going to use, you're doing it as safely as possible, and that you're using with somebody that you trust to administer naloxone, which is a life-saving drug, reversal drug for an opioid. But a lot of times if somebody is in active addiction and they are using under unsafe conditions, which could mean that if they are an IV user, maybe they're using someone else's needle, which is very unsafe, or they're reusing their own needle, which again is very unsafe. They can say that they're cleaning it and using all precautions, but that doesn't change the fact that you should never reuse a needle or ever, ever use someone else's needle. The places that maybe they're using, because they are not going to go and use, well, some do, some will use right there in your household. However, others are trying to hide it. So they might be in a back alley, in a bathroom, dirty places where they could pick up an infection like MRSA. These are all just, there's just so many different variables that, again, your decision making is not at its best when you're in active addiction. So you don't necessarily care the who, what, when, where, why, and how. You just know what you need to do to feel better. So all of that is something to take into account, and a conversation to have with your loved one, and telling them, like, I don't want you to harm yourself further because you are using in a dangerous place or under dangerous conditions. So then we also have misusing to avoid withdrawal or to relieve pain, which kind of I explain that when we're talking about using under dangerous conditions. When one is addicted to a substance, like I said earlier, it is the flu times 100 when they are in active withdrawal. So they are misusing now, not because they want to get high, but because they're afraid of that withdrawal and they want to relieve the pain that they're in. So, and also misusing a substance to relieve pain, which falls back to that trauma piece, that kind of pain, inner pain. Maybe they're not even addicted yet, but they're just trying to relieve that inner pain that they're in. But then it'll eventually turn into this anyway. If you're continuing to relieve for that kind of pain and you're not seeking the proper help from a doctor to talk through whatever that inner pain is. So that can get very dangerous too, because if they are misusing to avoid withdrawal, they are not thinking about anything other than fixing that immediate pain that they're in, which means, again, you're at a higher risk for a dangerous area or a dangerous condition. You're at a higher risk for illegal activities, and you're also at a higher risk for an unintentional overdose. You are not caring where you're getting that medication from. And there are so many medications now laced with the opioid fentanyl, which is causing an even higher overdose increase right now throughout the county, that you're just putting yourself in a very dangerous situation. And then there's that just constant negative behaviors. You just notice a consistent decline in your loved one, and you just know that something is going on. Ask for help. It's as simple as maybe even calling crisis intervention team to come over and help you with that initial interview with your loved one. But believe it or not, most want the help. They don't know how to ask for it, and they're afraid to ask for it because they're afraid of getting in trouble. So if they know that you're on their side and that you are there for them and you're willing to help, you might be able to stop something or help get them to a better place. So now I just want to talk to you guys a little bit about what are the different drugs, tobacco and alcohol, that you should be aware of, look out for, and kind of explain, I guess, it a little bit so that you understand a little bit more. So what is an opioid? An opioid is any drug that contains opium or its derivative. There's natural forms, there's synthetic forms. We have prescription medications, and then, of course, we have illegal drugs. It comes in a pill, a capsule, powder, or liquid. It can be swallowed, drank, smoked, snorted, or even injected. Some examples of prescription opioids would be oxycodone, Oxycontin, or Percocet. We have hydrocodone, otherwise known as Vicodin. There's hydromorphine or Dilaudid, morphine, codeine, methadone, heroin. And then, of course, we have fentanyl. And fentanyl is 50 times stronger than heroin and 100 times stronger than morphine. I also just want to note that heroin, as that is a known opioid and has been for hundreds of years, it's almost non-existent anymore. That it is a opioid that is considered a natural synthetic medication or opioid. But now when we get our, I guess, data back, our data reports from overdoses directly from the police, that it kind of gives us a nice little breakdown, right? We can see how many overdoses happened, what area it happened, and what were the drugs that were in that person's body when they overdosed. And you'll see a heroin fentanyl mix or some sort of fentanyl mix, but heroin has almost been at zero now for over a year, I think. And it's because at this point they're selling it as heroin, but it's not actually heroin. It's just fentanyl because a drug dealer, unfortunately, is trying to make that sale. And the more potent their medication is, the higher chance it is that that person's going to come back to them. They are not trying to kill anybody. They are just trying to make their drug the best that there is to keep somebody coming back. But because fentanyl is just so strong, that 3 little grains of salt worth of it is enough to kill somebody. So that I just wanted to let everybody know that heroin is almost non-existent because fentanyl is taking over, but it's still an opioid that is very dangerous. Then we have a stimulant. This is a different type of drug, not an opioid, but this is something that's not going to slow your heart rate down, but increase your heart rate. So it raises the level of the physiological or nerves activity in the body. It causes an irregular heartbeat rhythm. It raises their body temperature. It raises their blood pressure. It can cause seizures. It's also something that can be swallowed, drank, smoked, snorted, or injected. So a stimulant is also classified as something like Adderall or Ritalin. It could also be an antidepressant like Paxil or Prozac, Zoloft. Those are all considered stimulants, but they're, of course, safe and prescribed by doctors as long as you're taking it as prescribed. Then there's diet pills that are out on the market that are not FDA approved. Maybe they are FDA approved, but that's what that's doing, is it's speeding everything up in hopes that you lose the weight. We have steroids, uppers like cocaine, and then also testosterone or juicing are all considered a stimulant as well. Additional drugs that as a parent you should be aware of, or anybody really, our youth needs to be aware of these too. We have benzos, which is a benzodiazepine, things like Xanax or Xanax bars, they're all the ways known as bars, Ativan, Klonopin, and Valium, they are all something that is used for anxiety treatment. There's inhalants like nitrous oxide, otherwise known as hippie crack, laughing gas, poppers, um, or even if one was to get a bottle of whipped cream and you don't shake it and you just that has that nitrous oxide in it. So that's a way for you to use an inhalant. There's of course marijuana and cannabis, which is now legal. Edibles, anything that is not from a dispensary, you should absolutely be aware of. Also, I want to keep in mind that even though cannabis is technically legal, it is only legal if you have a medical marijuana card. And yes, there are absolutely positive reasons for cannabis, but 18 years of age or older for a medical marijuana card, with the exception of a few people, maybe a cancer patient or somebody that suffers from extreme seizures. But again, it is something that can mess with your brain. We talked about that brain development at 23 to 25 years old. So the younger they are and the more they're using it at a younger age, it's going to stop that brain development. So it truly needs to be something that is absolutely 100% needed, not and it should not be overused. And just because you have a medical marijuana card does not mean that you can drive under the influence, that you can, if your job still has the right to stop you from that medical, they have the right to say no, basically, that they, even if you have a medical marijuana card, they don't have to hire you. So I just want to put that out there because I know that that has been some common misconception with cannabis. And then of course there's hallucinatives, which LSD, DXM, which you can find in cough syrup, mushrooms, acid, ketamine, xylazine, which is the newest drug on the street, which is unbelievably dangerous and it causes major, major skin infections, and there is no reversal drug for it. And we are finding that it is being laced with fentanyl and being called heroin. But the naloxone reversal drug does not work on xylazine, unfortunately. There's bath salts, PCP, and angel dust. We have alcohol, which is again another legal drug, but it is legal for one that is 21 years of age or older for a reason. It is colorless and it is a flammable liquid that is produced, and it has a lot of like sugars in it, and it turns into wine, beer, spirits, or other drinks. You can die from the withdrawal of the symptoms of alcohol. It is actually the only drug that you can die during alcohol withdrawal. So you won't necessarily die from withdrawal of other substances. Not that you can't, but chances are you're not going to. Or if you were trying to withdraw at home, you might be very, very sick. But with alcohol, it's different. You really need to be monitored by a healthcare professional because you can die from alcohol withdrawal. It is just something with what's in the alcohol and the way that it affects your body. So you want to make sure that you are absolutely see a healthcare professional and you are being monitored if you have an alcohol dependency and you want to not have an alcohol dependency anymore. Alcohol dependency can also cause something called wet brain. Wet brain is where the longer you have been on alcohol or using alcohol, it tends to make your brain, your memory starts to slip quite significantly. You start talking differently, you think differently. It definitely affects your brain significantly. And then, of course, it can cause liver failure or even kidney failure. Some different variations of alcohol would be your beer, wine, you have your liquor and spirits, but also if somebody is an alcoholic, mouthwash, hand sanitizer. I also want to let you guys know what binge drinking is. Binge drinking is drinking more than 3 drinks per hour, and this is because the liver can only filter out 1.5 drinks per hour. So this goes into your legal driving limit and where that 0.08 came from. After 4 drinks, you're considered legally drunk. So we always just recommend 1 to 2 drinks per hour, which will keep you under a 0.08 and safe. But of course, you should never drink under any alcohol. But that all kind of falls into just the way that your body processes alcohol. So a 0.08 would be considered the illegal driving limit, but you can still be fined at 0.07, and that would be a DUI and a DWI. But more importantly, that binge drinking factor and understanding that when people hear the words binge drinking, they think that means that they are chugging a giant bottle of vodka in 15 minutes. No, binge drinking is classified as having more than 3 drinks in an hour. And again, your body just can't filter and process out more than 1.5 drinks an hour. So keeping that in mind and understanding how dangerous alcohol can be, how quickly it can become dangerous. And the last substance that I want to discuss with you is tobacco. So, tobacco causes cancer, heart disease, strokes, lung diseases, diabetes, along with chronic illnesses such as COPD, emphysema, and chronic bronchitis. Hot item right now is our vape products, which I'm going to get into a little bit more because that is the number one current drug in our youth. Then we have cigarettes, hookahs, cigars, snuff, and dip. As far as vape goes, there's a lot of different chemicals in vape, which can be formaldehyde, nickel, things that you would never ever put into your body. But that is all what's in a vape cartridge. And they need those chemicals in a vape cartridge in order for them to add that chemical that makes that flavor taste so good. One vape cartridge is equivalent to a single pack of cigarettes, and our youth are going through 2 and 3 cartridges a day because they think that it's water vape. There is not water vape. It is tobacco. It is dangerous, and it is the number one teen drug throughout the United States right now, starting as early as middle school. So talk to your kids about vapes. They can look like a jump drive. They can look like a walkie-talkie. They're odorless, colorless. Have a conversation because it is potentially very dangerous and highly addictive. So now that we've talked about warning signs and what is different drugs and what do they look like, things all the way around, let's talk about how it impacts our youth, because we do a lot of surveys, and I think it's important for everybody to know that when we ask our kids questions, how did they respond? So, what did our youth say when we asked them? Over 2.8 million, which is 8.33% of 12 to 17-year-old nationwide report that they have used drugs in the last month. Drug use went up 81% among 8th graders between 2016 and 2020, and it has only increased since COVID because they started using at a younger age. 62% of 12th graders said that they have abused alcohol, and 50% of teenagers have misused a drug at least once. Those are some pretty significant numbers. Again, it's as simple as a conversation. Talk, ask, and don't be afraid to ask. Over the next couple of slides, you're going to see a bunch of different graphs that just show different percentages from drug usership among Americans under the age of 12. The first one is a nice little breakdown. You can see what is the different percentages for various drugs, from marijuana, cocaine, LSD, ecstasy, methamphetamines, and heroin. The graph shows at the bottom, you can see the different colors as used in a lifetime, used in the last year, and used in the last month. Our next slide talks about substance abuse statistics. I'm not going to get into each one of these because you can clearly read them, but it is really important for you to look through these and read. And I really, again, want to point out the 57 million people use tobacco or nicotine and vape products. That is really, really big. The usership among people under the age of 12, and of course the 1.38 million Americans 12 and over that drink alcohol. These are really big numbers in the grand scheme of things. So again, it all starts with a conversation and understanding and being aware. Knowledge is power, and knowing and educating yourself to be able to ask the appropriate questions and to start that conversation is just so unbelievably important. Our next slide shows our substance abuse statistics breakdown by substances and age groups. This data was collected, probably the most recent, from 2022 to 2023. We like to have needs assessments and do data collection every so many years. Usually we try to go like every 2 years. There was a slight break because of COVID. We were due for a new one from 2020 to 2021, but we got a little pushback. So we started collecting our data in 2021 into 2022. So you should be seeing reports anytime, like new reports starting to be released. So you can always go to aacounty.org where they post reports from the police, OEM, and various medical reports, updates constantly, and you're going to get your most up-to-date facts there. We have drug abuse demographics. On our next slide, 24% of 12th graders abuse drugs, 20% of 10th graders have said that they abuse drugs, and 5% of 8th graders said that they have abused drugs. 70% of our users who tried an illegal drug before the age of 13 develop a substance use disorder within the next 7 years, compared to the 27% who try an illegal drug after the age of 17. That's a pretty significant statistic. And 22% of males and 17% of females use illegal drugs or misuse a prescription drug in the last year. Again, talk to your kids, read these, read my slides. First time users of drugs, and this is typically a breakdown of what they try first. Alcohol is going to be that first drug. Chances are they're going to be at a party or a friend's house at a sleepover. They're going to have a drink. Maybe they had a bad day that day. They realized it made that bad day go away. So now they're going to start using alcohol more when they have a bad day. They hear their parents come in from work and said, "Oh my God, I had the worst day today and I just need a glass of wine to unwind." Well, now they know that their parent is using that wine to unwind from a bad day, so why shouldn't they? It's that language and watching what we say and talking about better ways to approach having a bad day. But then also having the conversation about not using a substance in general to fix a problem. So this next slide is talking about drug-related deaths. Again, I'm not going to get into it, and I don't want to worry anybody or scare anybody, but at the end of the day, if we're talking about substance misuse disorder, this is a very real thing, and one pill can kill. One use can kill. One time can kill. So the best way to stop substance misuse before it starts is addressing the conversation, educating, because again, education is power, and telling our kids that we can address something negative with a positive. It doesn't have to be a substance. So letting them know that you're there for them and you want to have a conversation. What are some healthy strategies that we can put in place and a routine set up, or having something in place for certain situations? It all starts with a conversation. I want to quickly get into signs of an overdose, just in case, so you know. If you know someone who uses, particularly opioids or fentanyl, some overdose symptoms are cold, clammy skin, pinpoint pupils, slowed down heart rate, and unconsciousness. If you respond to an overdose, follow these steps. First, you want to rouse and stimulate. Then you want to call 911. You want to call 911 before you do anything else, because they're going to walk you through these steps, because you're probably going to forget. Trust me. Administer naloxone if you have it. If you don't have it, you can get it free from harm reduction right at your Department of Health. Rescue breaths or CPR, and then putting them in the recovery position and staying in care for that person. Recovery position just means you're getting them up on their side and kind of propping their head open to open that airway. And if they are to vomit, it would come out so they're not aspirating on anything. This is a great slide right here. Take a picture of it, hold on to it, save it, because it's healthy ways to cope with stress. Again, this was put together by our Department of Health, who has a great team in place. You can find all of this on their website at www.preventsubstancemisuse.org. You can reach out to one of your 4 coalitions. There's a map right on there that tells you who is who. But all of these things are listed on there. We try to get out in the community as much as possible and hand these flyers out. But this is a great way to help teach teenagers to cope with stress, because 51% of our youth ages 12 to 17 said that they felt negative effect on their emotional and mental health due to the COVID-19 pandemic and because of everyday stressors. Remember, them fighting with a friend, in a relationship, or getting bad grades is equivalent to the stresses that we as adults are dealing with, such as not being able to pay our bills. We had a bad day at work. Our bosses are hounding us for whatever reason. It is the same. Don't tell them that it's not. They need to feel equal. They need to feel acknowledged and understood. So these are some great ways to help them talk it out and keep things moving forward in a positive way. If you want to help save a life, again, this is the recovery position, a little photo for you. We teach Narcan training classes virtually once a month. We can schedule one up individually or a large group. Again, you can sign up right on our website. Good Samaritan laws save life. This is something important for everybody to know. What is the Good Samaritan law? It means that it is a law put in place to protect a volunteer giving aid to an injured person in an emergency situation. This is alcohol, this is choking, and this is an overdose. I need everyone to be aware of that. Call 911. They are there to help. They are not there to get anybody in trouble. If you are actively trying to save a life in any way, shape, or form, there are two separate laws put in place to protect you. Nobody can come back on you if, say, that person didn't make it through their overdose or you were administering CPR and you broke a rib. And then there's laws put in place that if you were to call 911 seeking that help, they cannot arrest anyone. And this is including alcohol. And then here we are with some resources. For more help, always contact our crisis intervention team. You don't need to be in a crisis to get their help. They do food insecurities. They can hook you up with a licensed clinician or provider for substance misuse or mental health. They can treat and triage on site right at your house. They meet you where you are. We have safe stations where you can go to any place, anytime, and meet somebody, and they will do an immediate intake and help you get into a treatment facility with no wait. I know calling those numbers sometimes and being put on hold is one of the hardest obstacles. I have been there. I have lost both of my brothers to substance misuse disorder. I've walked those shoes, but calling crisis intervention, they have their ways of helping you go beyond that. You will never feel not heard again. 911 emergency number, 988 is a mental health emergency number. You got your teendruguse.org and aahealth.org. This is a great student help connection for students. We had the 988 crisis line. We have crisis intervention team once again, and all the numbers that AACPS has put in store for our youth and our students. This is right there on their Brightspace as well. This is information cards that Student Services has put in place that they feel these are the best numbers to reach out to. And I just again want to thank you. And once again, my name is Katie Wargo. I am the coalition coordinator for Northern Lights and WASP, two of the four prevention coalitions right here in Anne Arundel County, along with Leslie Beers, who is the ASAP and South County Bridges coalition coordinator. And I am the program director for Sound of Silence, a program that comes into middle schools and high schools and talks to our youth about mental health and substance misuse disorder and brings them immediate access to those services. I hope you guys have a great day.